Hi, buddy, and welcome back to Weather for Weather Geeks, the Tuesday evening edition here on the 25th day of January 2022. Today into tomorrow, a big weather anniversary for our region, the blizzard of 1978. We're going to talk about that some more tomorrow evening on Weather for Weather Geeks because the impacts were most pronounced around eastern Ohio and western PA on the 26th of January back in 1978. So we'll talk about that tomorrow evening. We have no such blizzards heading our way anytime real soon, although the East Coast could flirt with blizzard criteria by the upcoming weekend. We'll talk about kind of a near miss for us later in the video. First things first, with the clearing sky today, we actually got a pretty good shot for the first time in a while, really, of the region on our high-res satellite picture with a sea of white across the land, and that's kind of a mix of clouds and, of course, our deep snowpack. And, of course, we have the ice, which is getting thicker on the western end of Lake Erie. There's some near-shore ice across the southern part of the lake as well. Closer to home, here's Mosquito Lake right here, frozen over, of course. And, yeah, just about the entire region has at least a handful of inches, if not double-digit snowfall depth numbers at this point. Most of us in our TV viewing area have somewhere between 8 and 12 inches of snow on the ground. The ice coverage on the Great Lakes is up to 21.8%. On Lake Erie, it's closer to 40%. And again, in the shallower parts of Lake Erie, we are starting to see a fair amount of ice coverage. Now, for the basin as a whole, for Lake Erie, again, up to about 40%. That's the most recent blue bar right there. But par is actually closer to 50%, so we're still a little bit behind schedule. But making up ground quickly here with all the cold weather we've had over the last couple of weeks. All right, this morning we had some flurries around. Even a couple of pretty substantial snow showers rumbled through for a time this morning, giving a quick almost a half an inch to the airport. We had reduced visibility and slick spots in parts of Trumbull, Mahoning County, and over into Lawrence County for a time this morning. Check out these records today. Boy, doesn't that sound nice. 71 in 1950. That's one of the warmest January temperatures on record for our region. The record low is an old one, 1897. It was 15 below zero for the month in the snow department. We're up to 21.7 at the airport. Almost a half a foot more than average through the 25th day of the month. Here's a quick time lapse from Boardman this morning showing, roads got a little bit slick for a time with those snow showers pushing through. There's a little lake enhancement going on. I just talked quite a bit about the ice coverage on the Great Lakes, including, of course, Lake Erie. Until Lake Erie freezes over, lake effect can still be an issue, even though the water temperatures are getting pretty cold and there's some ice formation. As long as you have a big enough temperature difference between the lake water temperatures and the air a few thousand feet above our heads, you can get some lake effect, some lake enhancement, and we'll see this again tonight and into tomorrow morning. And the reason for that, on the water vapor, if you look carefully, there's kind of a bend here, a little kink in the water vapor. This is what we call a short wave, an upper level disturbance that will rotate through the Great Lakes tonight into tomorrow, cause some instability, and pick up some moisture, and the lake effect will be most problematic in some of the usual places. So from Ashtabula County over to Crawford County, up into Erie County, PA, parts of southwest New York, your 1-inch snow odds ramp up quickly as you travel north on I-79 out of Mercer County and into Crawford County, and especially up into Erie County. In our TV viewing area, chances of 1 inch of snow over the next 24 hours are very small, generally under 10%. But yes, there's going to be some flurries around and maybe a little skiff of fresh snow in a couple of spots tomorrow morning. The lake effect machine will shut down pretty quickly, though, by tomorrow afternoon and evening as high pressure builds in. And speaking of that high pressure zone, as it builds in, the sky will clear out tomorrow night, leading to even colder temperatures. Many places will see some sub-zero temperatures tomorrow night. Not as cold as it was last Friday night and Saturday morning, but still sub-zero, a good bet in some of the colder spots. Then clouds will increase on Thursday ahead of our next cold front. This is another Arctic front. Now, our in-house model here, I think, is underdoing the coverage of snow shower activity, light snow activity Friday morning. I think the radar will be a little more filled in eastern Ohio and western PA around our front Friday morning. So while we're not expecting big accumulations, there can be some impacts, especially during the first half of the day Friday. Some of our medium-range models here, we're showing the European model, the GFS model, what we call the GFS Ensemble model, and all painting kind of, real modest snowfall accumulations here. But again, as I've been preaching a lot lately, when it's as cold out as it will be, every flake can stick. Don't get too hung up on the numbers. We got a deep snowpack, and most of us aren't going to be measuring this anyway. But, half an inch to an inch worth of snow overnight, first thing Friday morning. Yeah, some slick travel can certainly result. All right, we're going to miss out on potentially a pretty big deal along the East Coast this weekend as the ingredients try to come together. Now, this animation shows the overall pattern depicted by the European model, which is the most aggressive model and certainly is the model that's it's going to make the most snow weenies happy. In New England, the Mid-Atlantic states, just a classic setup here depicted by the European with strong upper level low, big time jet stream dynamics, lots of what we call divergence in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So when the air separates aloft, it's like a vacuum effect. As it separates aloft, it has to pull in air to replace that air. Down from underneath, that air rises, you get a big storm, you get a lot of rising motion. In other words, you get a lot of snow where the air is cold enough along the eastern seaboard. The track is too far to the east for us, and I don't see any scenario in which we get in on this action. But again, this is probably kind of a worst case scenario. This is off the European model. Not every model is this aggressive with the snow, but this shows the high-end potential of this for the I-95 corridor along the East Coast up into New England. You know, double-digit snowfall totals, perhaps even a couple of feet at the higher end of the range of possibilities. Now, if the track is a little bit farther to the east, then you can cut all this stuff at least in half. If it's a little bit farther to the west, then you can count some inland areas in some of the heavier snow bands, and maybe it turns into kind of a wintry mix along the immediate shoreline. So very tough forecasting for meteorologists in coastal New England, the mid-Atlantic states as well. Again, not a problem for us, but if you have friends or family in Providence, Boston, New York City, even as far south as Philadelphia, maybe even Washington, D.C., they're going to want to pay attention to forecasts very carefully over the next few days. The impacts would be at the start of the upcoming weekend, Friday and into Saturday. Showed you this map last evening. Good news in the longer range. A thaw is coming our way for next week. It'll be kind of an interesting week next week. Our temperatures locally will probably get into the 40s for at least a couple of days. The weather quiets down after our East Coast storm goes away. But then as the warmth builds across the eastern two-thirds of the country, not for us, but middle of next week, around the second, third day of February, around Groundhog's Day, it's a pretty good-looking severe weather setup in the middle of the country. So from Texas up into the mid-Mississippi Valley, this might be a severe weather concern as this comes east. And then on the cold side of the storm, a heavy snow event with maybe an ice storm in some spots. All of that's going to be on the table. A very interesting week for weather next week for us. I think we start out cold Sunday into Monday, but then finally get above freezing. Our snowpack is going to start to melt. We're not going to jump up into the 60s, so this isn't going to be one of those deals where our foot of snow melts instantly and we have big-time flooding problems. I don't see that happening. It'll be a little more of a gentle thaw, which is what we want. But yeah, at least a couple of days with highs in the 40s for next week, maybe even flirting with 50 or so. We'll get more confident on that as we get a little bit closer. But the end is in sight for this relentless cold pattern that we've been in for a couple of weeks. The grand finale of the cold will be this weekend. We'll be in the teens Saturday, 20 Sunday. But then by this time next week, we're talking about some relief coming our way as we turn the calendar to February. Thanks for watching tonight. I'll see you back here on Wednesday for a fresh edition of the Valley's most in-depth weather forecast.